international affairs, which wasn't necessarily a universally held view throughout all of the United States in those days. Today, the Council continues to promote constructive U.S. leadership and engagement in international affairs based on the central role of the Atlantic community in meeting the international challenges of the 21st century. We work through a nonpartisan network and a bipartisan network of leaders to stimulate dialogue and discussion about critical global issues with a view to enriching the public debate and promoting consensus on appropriate responses in the administration, Congress, corporate and nonprofit sectors, and the media in the United States and among leaders in Europe, Asia, Africa, Middle East, the Americas. We actually have noticed that the Atlantic Ocean washes up on actually 4 continents and not just a couple. Within this context, the Michael S. Ansari Africa Center was founded 2 years ago through the visionary commitment of Mr. Michael Ansari, and we're honored to have you here today with us, sir, with the mandate to help transform U.S. and European policy approaches to Africa, modernize U.S. and European African policy approaches and thinking about Africa by emphasizing the building of strong partnerships with African states, strengthening economic growth and prosperity on the continent, and working with the public and private sectors in forging practical solutions to challenges and opportunities. With the arrival of our impressive new director at the Center, J. Peter Pham, we look forward to reinvigorating our engagement in Africa and extending our work. Thus, we are delighted to welcome you today as you begin an official visit to the United States that is truly historic, and I know that word is somewhat overused, but I think in this case it's true, as you will be the first head of state from sub-Saharan Africa to be officially hosted as a guest at Blair House, America's state guest house, during the presidency of the first president of the United States, who is himself a descendant of Africa. Moreover, we are pleased to welcome you because of the important role that Gabon and you yourself personally have played and continue to play in the strategic reshaping of relations, not only between the United States and Africa, but also Africa and Europe and Africa and the rest of the world. Since you completed your doctorate in law at the University of Paris Panthéon-Sorbonne, you have spent your entire career in public service, holding a number of positions, including Minister of Foreign Affairs and Cooperation, Member of Parliament, and Minister of National Defense. You were elected in multi-party elections in August 2009, following the death of your father, and you were inaugurated in October of that year. Since then, your agenda has focused on major economic and infrastructure projects, as well as administrative and political reforms, with the goal of transforming Gabon into an emerging country. Last year, if I have my numbers correctly, you had $5 billion of direct investment, a huge success for a country of your size. In this respect, very important has been the active diplomacy which you have engaged in, serving as a bridge between the various parts of Africa and between Africa and Europe and North America. You've truly been a transatlanticist, as we would say here at the Atlantic Council, a fact that the presence of many in the audience today testifies to. Thus, Mr. President, we look forward to hearing you on U.S. African Relations, the next chapter. Welcome to the podium. And after the President's comments, Mr. Pham will moderate the discussion.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by offering my congratulations to the Atlantic Council on achieving 50 years of strong and significant contribution to the debate on U.S. foreign policy issues. I'd also like to thank the President of the Council, Mr. Frederick Kim, for inviting me today. Let me also extend my gratitude to the Michael S. Ansari African Center and its director, Dr. J. Peterfan, for hosting this event. And among many friends who are here present today, I'd like to single out General Ward, recently retired founding commander of the U.S. Africa Command, who did so much to build security partnerships with African countries like my own. It is a real pleasure to be able to share a few thoughts on Africa in the 21st century, a topic that I believe is especially relevant in our world today. The mission of the Ansari Center to build strong geopolitical partnerships with African states and strengthening business and prosperity on the continent is one that resonates with my own vision for the future. It is also closely aligned to the position taken by President Barack Obama in his historic address to the Ghanaian Parliament in 2009. Africa is becoming ever more prominent in today's world. Perhaps the most prominent situation is that of Libya. And as a member of the United Nations Security Council and current holder of the rotational presidency, Gabon has a key role to play. The Arab Spring, and in particular, the events in Libya have demonstrated clearly the developmental challenge that faces Africa as a whole. The obvious failures of governments to deliver a true social contract for their people are the root cause of the events we have witnessed. Our people expect their leaders to govern with vision. We must have the vision to understand and that democracy today is about more than just elections. It is about building strong institutions and a pluralistic society. In Africa, where our democratic culture is still young, where our institutions and our constitutions are generally still the ones bequeathed to us by our colonizers, the full realization of this democratic ideal can be sometimes difficult. These difficulties, which all too often are prejudged from afar, need to be recognized and understood. Do not misunderstand me. I'm not asking you to close your eyes on undemocratic practices. We all know where they lead to. Rather, I'm asking you to be conscious of our challenges. You should encourage and support those of us who generally respect democratic principles and the rule of law. Respect for national institutions cannot be separated from the respect for individuals. While we leaders are expected, as I said before, to govern with vision, our respect for institutions is the ultimate safeguard for stable and strong democracies and the ultimate security for citizens to know that their collective will is taken into account. President Obama put this at the forefront of his approach to Africa when he said in Ghana that two of his key goals were to support strong and sustainable democratic governments and supporting development that provides opportunities for more people. I believe that these opportunities for Africa in the 21st century are greater than they ever been in the past. The responsibility to ensure that the position we found ourselves in result in maximum value for all lies with Africa's leaders, and it is a responsibility that we must take very seriously. Let me give you a bit of an insight into why I say that the opportunity that Africa has never been greater than now. I want to do this without throwing GDP growth figures at you, which may seem unusual, but once again, the Arab Springs has clearly demonstrated that GDP growth in itself is insufficient for long-term development. The first example I'd like to give is telecommunications. And why? Well, because the explosive growth in Africa in this sector over the last 15 years is a demonstration of interconnectedness to which I have previously referred to. Telecommunications is probably the most widely known success story on the African continent, and at the same time directly contributed to the revolution in North Africa. Today, a rural farmer or herder can use his mobile phone to call ahead to market towns and find out where he can find the best price for his goods. He can leverage this information to bargain with buyers. In the same way, social activists can communicate and coordinate dissent, circumventing the requirement for physical contact and making it difficult for governments who wish to quell opposition to do so. From 7.5 million phone users, mobile phone users in 1999, a recent report released at the end of the month of May suggests that Africa now has over 500 million mobile phone users. The second example I want to give is some could say more controversial one, but one that can form the bedrock for our development as a nation. I'm talking about natural resources. We are a continent that has historically failed to leverage the value of our resources. Those resources are more in demand today than ever before by a wider audience. Whether I look east, west, north, south, I see a growing clamor and interest in securing access to them. As a president, it is my role to make sure that we take advantage of the position of relative strength that we find ourselves in. We must ensure that the deals we make for our resources maximize our ability to change our approach to development for the benefit of all Africans. We must also ensure that illicit trade, be it of diamonds, timber, or fish extracted illegally, or criminal trafficking of drugs or ivory, are fought with determination. I believe that there is a clear correlation between growth in these illegal activities and political instability. There is almost universal acceptance today that good regulation and economic liberalization will underpin growth and ensure that all benefit. Our acceptance of these norms in Africa has much less to do with ideology and much more to do with our desire to emulate the success of many East European, Asian, and Latin American economies, which provide compelling motives to reform. For this to happen, good governance is essential. This will only be achieved if leaders have the courage to take the tough decisions that are needed to implement the changes Africa so badly needs. Now, if we combine good governance and regulation, economic liberalization and positive aspirations, then we have the basic conditions to underpin massive growth, as was achieved in Asia in the 1960s. These developments will underpin Africa's development in the 21st century. These developments are already attracting the interest of investors from every corner of the globe. As was said by Mr. Camp last year, in Gabon we were able to attract more than $5 billion in new investment from foreign enterprises in manufacturing and infrastructure rather than traditional oil and gas sector. As the world is increasingly looking at Africa, at our resources, and as we are more empowered than ever to build our economies, it is important that African nations take their own destiny into their own hands. This is Africa's great modern challenge. While the opportunities are there, we should be under no illusions that there are still many difficulties. But the situation has never looked as promising as it is today. If our African leaders are genuine about building partnerships, we need to engage fully as partners. The best way to do so is to have a clear and coherent vision of the socio-economic path we want to follow and the audacity to implement the changes that requires. I would like to focus on Gabon for a moment to share with you how we are implementing this in my country. As you might know, Gabon has been blessed with abundant natural resources, including oil, which has been a true blessing for us as it enabled us to sustain our economic growth. But I also have to confess that we became slightly complacent due to oil. We relied on it, to sustain our GDP growth, finance our social system, and give us a place at the table in international discussions. This complacency pervaded all of our society, slowly killing the drive to work hard, to innovate, to anticipate a future where oil will no longer be our key asset. In other words, we grow lazy. This observation was at the heart of my reflection when I decided to run for the presidency. I wanted to challenge my fellow Gabonese, to engage more actively into the future, to challenge my country to demonstrate that sustainable solutions are possible in a modern world. My participation in the international debate around environment, and notably in Copenhagen, confirmed my intuition to do so. We needed it to change our thinking radically. We needed to invent a new development model, one centered on both man and the environment. I then challenged my fellow people to strive for emerging country status for our country by 2020, capturing this concept in two words, in French, Gabon émergent, emerging Gabon. Emerging Gabon is built on our greatest asset, our environment. More than 80% of our land is still covered by rich equatorial forest. National Geographic has christened Gabon the last Eden. Gabon is blessed by nature, and we must act as responsible stewards whilst using these riches optimally for the development of the Gabonese people. I am convinced that preserving the asset is the key to building a sustainable model of development. Just as Teddy Roosevelt said back in 1907, the conservation of natural resources is the fundamental problem. Unless we solve that problem, it will avail us little to solve all other problems. The resources over which we fight in the future will no longer be oil that fuels our car, or diamonds that adorn the fingers of millions, or the coltan that powers our mobile phones. The wars of the future will be fought over water, food, and land. They will be fought because of the pressures exerted by a growing body of humanity on the natural world that sustains all of us. Peace, security, and the environment are interdependent. We cannot work for lasting peace if we don't confront the causes that we know will lead to wars in the future. In 2009, the Africa Progress Panel estimated that climate change currently affecting Africa will lead to armed conflicts in 23 countries and political unrest in another 13. Protecting the environment is not a matter of scientific and economic agreement. It is about peace and ensuring that peace is possible. Preserving our natural environment is the surest and most effective means of preventing conflict in the future. It is a clear means of minimizing the need for the kind of military intervention we have seen in North Africa. Industrial Gabon has to take this into account. Last year, we banned the export of raw timber as we wanted to challenge the view of Africa and Gabon as a continent of cheap raw resources. This ban is not an end in itself. It aims to incentivize local exploitation of our wood. With this ban, we created a special economic zone dedicated to the wood industry and very attractive to foreign investors. We want to encourage the processing of logs in Gabon, turning them into finished or semi-finished products before selling them overseas. This transforms an important sector of the economy from simple forestry to a multifaceted timber industry. Jobs in this sector will not be limited to lumberjacks, but will now include factory workers and skilled craftsmen. Industrial Gabon will also be based on the exploitation of our oil, gas, and as well as our mineral resources. Gabon has the second largest reserve of manganese in the world and an important deposit of iron ore. With such reserves, we cannot limit our ambition to the simple export of raw metals. We are building all-encompassing infrastructure plans to make sure we as a country provide international partners who share our visions with all the power, roads, communications needed to transform our own resources locally. This said, the primary resources of any country is its human capital. In our plan Gabon de Service, is my strategy to develop and add value to the human capacity of Gabon. When there are not many of you, as is our case, your strength depends on good planning and ingenuity. That is why I'm putting training and acquisition of new technologies at the heart of my strategy. To illustrate this, we're building a satellite-based station linked to a center of excellence to collect and process satellite data across forested Africa. In addition, we're about to sign a cooperative agreement with the University of Oregon, a leader in research and teaching sustainable development. Hence, our vision is just not about economic emergence. It is more to do with a mental attitude, a confidence in ourselves, and a desire for all of us to build a better future, to be part of the change we are implementing in Gabon, both in political circles and civil society. My people elected me on the basis of my commitment to find solutions, on my promise to take the right decisions, however harsh and difficult they may be, to construct an emerging Gabon. Gabon has the potential to pilot real innovation and redefine how governments and the private sector collaborate to create sustainable growth. We want to create the long-term potential for our people to innovate, to allow them to compete, not just with each other or with their neighbors on the African continent, but globally. I firmly believe that these ideas are the bedrock of a development model for the third millennium, a model that the entire world recognizes as necessary, but is struggling to conceive and implement. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, friends, I hope that on this occasion I've been able to contribute to the dialogue begun 2 years ago by President Obama on the topic of U.S. relations with Africa. The President affirmed that we must start from the simple premise that Africa's future is up to Africans. The next chapter of African history has yet to be written. We do not know precisely where the story will take us. We do know that the 21st century will bring more interconnectedness, and with it, a greater sense of responsibility for ourselves to look both inwards within Africa and outward, to the rest of the world. That responsibility includes speaking forthrightly and following through on the promises we, and by we, I mean leaders in government, business, and civil society, the promises we make to our people, our constituents, our workers. This opportunity accorded me to me by the Atlantic Council is an example of Africa looking outward in friendship, and I hope equally an opportunity for you who are listening to learn something new about Africa, and in particular about Gabon. I hope too that my words today helped dispel some of the myths and stereotypes about Africa that are found too often in the news media or popular culture. Africa of the 21st century is not the Africa of Joseph Conrad's adventure novels, nor is it the Africa of the later half of the 20th century that was a staging ground for Cold War rivalries. It is a whole new world and a new century that we embrace along with our partners in North America, Europe, and Asia. The countries of Africa, Gabon included, share the visions of Americans for security, sustainable democracy, economic development, improved public health, and peace across the continent. Africa will not be able to develop itself without peace. Stability of the continent and good governance should be considered as strategic resources for the continent. We must pursue these goals as partners. Each of us has ideas to contribute. Each of us has effort to expand. Each of us wants to see the other succeed. Each of us needs to see the other succeed. But are we heard? Can we count on you, America, to treat us as equal partner with respect for our ideas and our specific challenges? Can we count on you not to amalgamating all of our 53 African countries under one generic label, relatively unknown, subject to prejudice, and, let's be frank, looked down upon? I sincerely hope we can. So let's have the courage to do so. I was heartened by President Obama's word in Accra 2 years ago that America has a responsibility to work with you as a partner. Together, let us write the next chapter in Africans' relation with the world and the world's relation with Africa, the continent that science tells us is the original home of humanity. I wish again to thank my host, President Kemp, Chairman Hagel, Dr. Farm, and all of you colleagues at the Atlantic Council for providing this forum today. I wish I could stay longer and speak to all of you individually, but as you know, Gabon serves this month as President of the United Nations Security Council, and my responsibilities in this regard, require me to return to New York City today. Anyway, I hope that on one day, very soon, I can reciprocate the hospitality shown by the Atlantic Council of the United States by hosting a forum much like this one in Gabon. In that event, I invite all of you to come to visit us. In fact, visit us even without the excuse of a formal event. We will welcome you. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President, for that speech and those words and the challenge to all of us to look at Africa in a new way. The President's graciously agreed to open this to questions and engage with the audience. And so if you would raise your hand, and then they'll bring a mic to you, and if you would kindly identify yourself for the benefit in the back there.
Good morning, Mr. President. Certainly nice to see you. I've been to Gabon at least 5 times. I was there in '95 leading an American delegation to monitor the elections, and I have a warm view of the country. My question, I'm glad you mentioned the issue of climate change, because I would like to know, how has climate change affected Gabon, and do you feel that the United States and Western countries are properly addressing climate change in Africa?
I would say that, like most countries in the world, we are being affected by climate change. It's one thing to recognize that these problems, are very important, and we've done so. We've also realized that it was important to be part of a solution than of a problem. So we took important decisions. And when we went to Copenhagen, our message was like, Gabon, as many countries in Africa, cannot be blamed, for pollution, for having done so for a whole century. But we recognize that if yesterday we were ignorant of the danger of climate change, today we all know. So let's forget the past and let's, look forward and do something. We are part of the Congo Basin. And as such, we wanted to make everybody recognize the importance, of the rainforest countries. So alongside with Brazil, the Amazon Basin, and also Southeast Asia, the Borneo-Mekong Basin, we want to tell the world that we are part of the solution. What we do in our country will affect, the rest of the world. It was not easy for us to decide that sitting on, as I mentioned, the country being covered by 80% of rainforest, it was not easy to decide and to convince people that, okay, we will go into preservation. We will not cut all the trees, though we need the resources, we need the money to develop our country. We are going to be wise about it. Today I can report that deforestation in Gabon is less than 1%, showing that we have been, showing leadership in trying to also show an example. We had hoped going to Copenhagen that the whole world would recognize the difficult situation we found ourselves in, but it wasn't the case. We're hoping that the next round in Durban in South Africa will bring the international community to recognize that there is, a big problem ahead of us, and that we have to respond collectively. One country cannot do it alone. It's a collective effort. So it'll be probably one of the topic on the agenda that I would have with, President Obama. We feel strongly about that. As I said in my speech, if we, for instance, the Congo Basin, the right policy, and we do not manage, the rainforest, we cut the trees, we will be responsible for a catastrophe in the future. Because right now, the desert is advancing almost a meter per year. If we do not do what is right, you will see that speed, accelerate, and you will see big shortage of water. And water is life. Without water, no agriculture. People will go hungry. We already have that problem in some African countries. So being stewards, of that rainforest is a big responsibility. But we cannot share, this burden alone. So we're appealing to the whole community, international community, to say, well, let's sit down and let's come out with a legally binding, treaty, one that would make sure that everybody will do what is required to. So we're looking forward, to this meeting in Durban in South Africa at the end of the year, hoping that we'll come up, with a better solution.
Over to, and if you would please identify yourself.
Good morning, Mr. President. My name is Tim Docking. I represent IBM Corporation. Thank you for your presentation this morning. I thought you spoke eloquently about the importance of democracy and political freedom, about environmentalism, about skills training in your country, and how important it is for the development of Gabon and the rest of the continent. And one can imagine, given your speech, some of your talking points with President Obama. I wonder if you could express to us how those talking points might be different if you were addressing the leadership of China, and in doing so, reflect a little bit upon how you think the Chinese are operating on the continent, and what advice you might have to them.
I try to have the same, attitude and politics for our partners outside Gabon. One is that I want everybody, to respect Gabon and what we do in Gabon. Whether you're Chinese, Americans, Brazilian, whatever, you have to respect what we're trying to do, man. We found that with the Chinese, it is important to develop, friendship, as we've done in the past. And then we found it much easier to talk to them. We have a very frank, relationship with the Chinese. We tell them, we give them our message. We make sure that they hear us. And we can do that because we are friends. We are friends. But what I tell our Chinese partners, pleasant or unpleasant, I keep that, in a relationship with the Chinese government. What is important? What is important is that if you want someone to change, what you consider as not right, I'm not sure that by first going public, it will make that person change. So, Gabon has a message for the whole world. Gabon insists, on being a country, rule of law is important, good governance, fight against corruption. And today we insist that we also want, though we invite investment in our country, we also want more share, more about, because before we could say that by being just an exporter of raw material, we were just being like spectator. We want to participate more. So we want to go into a win-win situation. And this message is the same, whether you're Chinese, French, American, whatever. So China is an important partner in Africa, and each country has its own way to deal with the Chinese, as you know, as we deal with the Germans or Americans or French. We do not see a problem with that.
Dr. Frazier?
Thank you. It's good to see you, Mr. President. And congratulations on taking the seat at the Security Council. My question is, in that role, how do you see Gabon playing its hand? More from a national interest or as a representative of the African continent and as a representative of Central Africa? And I ask the question partly because of what you started with, which is Libya. And your countryman, Yang Ping, was in town recently, and he mentioned that, in fact, the African Union was not consulted until very late in the game, when the decision was made by the Security Council to basically go to war with Libya, but yet South Africa did sit on the Security Council. And so I imagine that your foreign minister, your representative in New York will have to balance between being seen as representative and carrying the voice of Africa versus what your national interest may be, particularly vis-a-vis the United States and managing your bilateral relationship. And so I'm wondering just how do you see that dynamic in the positions that you might take?
Well, you're a person, experience yourself, so you know how difficult that is. And no longer ago, you were in that situation. Of course, as a representative of Africa Security Council, you have to find a balance, between your own national interests and the interests of the continent. 3 African countries on the Security Council right now: Nigeria, South Africa, and Gabon, and 3 that have, also passed the resolution. Have passed the resolution. For us, what is important is that as a member of AU, African Union, when we created the African Union, we insisted, that some elements, were very important for us. Human rights, good governance, democracy. Every country accepted that. It was not forced on anybody. And ever since, we keep repeating, that we value good governance, human rights, democracy. We do that. Therefore, we thought we would have been in a very strange situation not to put that, forward. When the situation of Libya came on the Security Council table, we already had dealt, with the situation in Tunisia and Egypt. And in those 2 countries, we saw what happened. Presidents, stepped down, the will of the people, trying to demonstrate peacefully. And in the end, the leadership stood that, rather than to go into more confrontation, civil war, it was best to step down, to give the country, a chance, peace, reconciliation, and building, stronger democracy. That wasn't the case in Libya. People started demonstrating peacefully. The response from the Libyan government was, and the response of the Libyan government pushed, those that were demonstrating peacefully, to seek to protect themselves. And then, it escalated. We'd hope that by passing that resolution, the Libyan government would understand the seriousness of the matter. All of us experience, in international matters, know very well that once a UN resolution is passed, it becomes dead serious. That was our hope. But as we were debating in the Security Council, the Libyan government tried, to solve the matter, by more aggression against the people. So, by the time they finished debating, and by the time they voted the resolution, they finished on the ground. That didn't happen. But that strategy from the Libyan government was a fatal mistake of what happened after. So of course we know that. Is it me? Although we know that there are some countries that are finding the situation difficult, and that they have a reservation about what's happening, we feel that we did the right thing. We do feel that we did the right thing. And we feel that in the future, people will recognize that we were right. But we also have to add that there was some sort of resentment for Africans to hear the North African problem was more like an Arab problem than an African. Egypt, Tunisia, and Libya are in Africa, after all. Countries in Africa occupied by Arabs, okay, but in Africa. And therefore the African Union should have been, right from the beginning, more, involved. We heard that, there were talks with, the Arab League, and then seeking the approval of the Arab League. But it was more Africa that should have been involved. And let's recall that on the Security Council you have more African countries than Arab. And it's because of the support of African countries that the resolution passed. So it shows us that we have to, each of us, make efforts to work together to make sure that in the future we do not have a situation where the whole continent feel that it was not, involved right from the beginning. But we have this month, in fact, a few weeks, meeting between some African countries, those that were in that panel, the AU panel on Libya, to meet with the Security Council, so that it would help, bring people together.
Thank you.
Question there?
Dear Mr. President, thank you very much for a very inspiring speech. My name is Rafael Jean-Solant, and I'm interning with Atlantic Council. I have a question on aid effectiveness. In your opinion, as the president of your country, what is necessary to enhance the effectiveness of aid and investment effectiveness for Africa? Because there is often a complaint that like the well-developed countries give a lot of aid and invest in Africa, but sometimes the investments, they go into their own hands. So in your opinion, how can good governance kind of increase the effectiveness of aid? Thank you.
I don't want to speak for others, I speak for Gabon. We in Gabon, I've never been very much in favor of, this aid policy, especially in the long term. We rather, want to be partners. That's why we favor investment, like direct investment, versus, aid. This aid policy has its limits. As I said, what happened to us regarding oil, I think for some other countries, the same. You could say about aid. Always waiting for others to come is not a good solution. You have to do something. You yourself also have to do something important. So we want to be a good partner. And to demonstrate, and I'm saying just very simple, we do not want to extend the hand no more. We want to shake the hand. This is our policy. And it's one we think it's much better for the future and for our people.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Paul Liho, Voice of America. Mr. President, when you took power, you said one of the things you really wanted to do was to take Gabon into a different direction. And one of the things that you came up with was this ambitious plan to develop an economic free zone. I happened to be in your country last year and I visited that site. I was wondering if you can maybe bring us to speed. How is that going? Because some of your critics say that it's very ambitious and unrealistic. And secondly, I wanted to follow up on what Dr. Fraser said on Libya. Would you vote for a resolution calling for the overthrow of Gaddafi, or you would vote with your fellow African brothers?
Well, we last year we launched the special economic zone, not far from Libreville. And we understand critics, saying that things are not going, fast enough. I'm by nature also a very patient man, though in this job I've learned, that one has to be patient. But it is moving rather well. Today we have companies coming from more than 10 countries that have already registered, and over $920 million. So it's fair to say that next August, we'll make an inauguration ceremony of the special economic zone. And we're invited to come and see. So I'm pleased the way things are moving along. As to your second question, I think our position is quite clear. And we do not need to take another vote. We say that one has to be part of a solution, not a problem. Now, today is the brother leader, Gaddafi, a solution? Do you think he's a solution? So you have your answer. And I think you agree with me.
I think we can take one more question.
Mr. President, my name is Aurel Ngweji. I'd like to
Speak louder, I can't hear you.
Yes, my name is Aurel Ngweji. I'd like to welcome you to Washington, D.C. And thank you for your message this morning. I have a question. It's about diaspora, African diaspora in the U.S. I think we are part of the best mind of African mind, and we are working here in the U.S., and sometimes we would like to serve in our countries. And I would like to ask you if, as an African leader or a African Union, there's any plan or any strategy to be able to bring the brain back home to serve and develop the countries and the continent.
In our case, we did not have a specific plan, regarding our diaspora. But we thought that if we take, good decisions, then our diaspora will be interested to find out more about what we're doing and to participate. And in our case, it is exactly what has happened. Today, Gabonese are coming back. And we're pleased about that. But it is for us, government, to do something for our people to come back. These people have left the country not because they really wanted to, but because they didn't find opportunities in their own country. Sometimes the problems comes from the relation between, what they learn, what they graduate from, and opportunities in country. So we're trying to really focus on that, to make sure that when they come out of, school, come out of university, they can find something, a job in their own country. So, and also, when we travel, we talk to them. We talk to our fellow compatriots and we find out first what they're doing, what they would like to hear from their government, and what they would like to see. So we take that into consideration, policies that we want to implement. Give, better opportunities, and you'll see lots of, people, even for a little less money, for good, working conditions, they will come back home. It's because it's very important. So I've been doing that for the last 2 years, and I've been seeing progress. And we at the palace receiving, lots of, letters, with the CVs, and we're very pleased about that. So in my staff, there are people assigned, just for that, to find and then get in touch with the companies and help some of the Gabonese to be able to find opportunities at home. And thank God, for us, so far it's working.
Mr. President, if I can avail myself of the host privilege to ask the last question. You spoke about reaching out, wanting an equal partnership. Concretely, what are some things that you are seeking from our allies, friends in Europe, certainly in the United States, concretely, perhaps in your meetings later this week with officials, that will help you with your agenda here and now and moving in the next year or two as you advance this great project of reform and this new chapter in Gabon and in Africa moving forward?
As I've indicated, we found more people interested in Africa as the last frontier because of our resources. But we want things to be done differently. There was a question about China, and the Chinese have recognized that they need Africa, to have access to the resources. We're telling all the friends that it's not so much about criticizing the Chinese, but responding, doing something also for us, and helping us build a strong economy. Most of them recognize now, that certain tools, such as good governance, fight against corruption, respect of democracy, human rights. These are tools also for development. We all have decided to move on that path. But what is, respect of democracy if people have to go hungry? You're not going to implement a strong democracy if you can't feed your people. What is to be potentially, wealthy? The wealth buried, and not developed. So our message is that come and help us build, our countries and strong economy. And the message is very simple. It's a win-win situation because you come invest and make money while we develop ourselves in the way that we want to, making sure that we also want to get something. It's different than the past. We're not, we hear that we have to deliver. So that's what we're doing, that the newer generation is aware of these things. And we are delivering, trying to good governance, democracy. We're doing that. But it has to be matched, by a stronger support. And lately, as I've told you Europeans, we haven't seen Americans. We have not seen them. And if I may so, some of our Americans, friends, keep lecturing. We're just lecturing. And we say we passed that. We all passed that. And so don't complain to see others coming and invest. But people should not feel that we're stupid in telling us, oh, do not let the Chinese come in. They have a hidden agenda. So don't you think we're stupid? Others have done that before. So you think we haven't learned? We have learned. But for some countries, what other choice do we have? So instead of lecturing, come. Visit, stay, learn also. And not make judgments from afar. They also recognize that, Africa is not, the United States of America. We have differences. And really what we want is not complicated. And we know that everybody wants to have access to our resources. It's important for some countries to maintain the economic growth rate. But if you see globally, Africa's growth rate has been, constant, over 5% as a whole. So it means that something is happening. We're really getting there. And we are going to get there. And this is very important to realize that if we don't, if Africa as a continent fails, it's going to affect many countries. starting first with Europe, and also others. And that's not going to help. We understand it's important for us to come here, deliver our message to ourselves. And say, well, come and visit. And really be partners. And if you have something to tell me, just tell me. But it's not necessary to go on the cameras and lecture me publicly. This is not going to work. Today, anyone can give, can go about lecturing. So it's much more, really helping. This is very important. We want to feed our people. We need to build, strong economies, and then help us, do that. That's why I insist and say that, in the case of Gabon, we were against aid. That's like give me a fish a day. Teach me how to fish, so I can feed myself. This is more important for me. So, as a great country, America, we found it difficult to accept that, America is not as, present as it should be in Africa. Investing more. We feel that we have a special also connection, bond with this country, and we'd like to see American companies come and invest and do business in Africa. But we're saying now, you can do business in Africa and you can make money. The Africa of today is different from yesterday. We also are citizens of the world. We know what's happening. And you've seen in Northern Africa, it was a kind of wake-up call for rulers, that had forgotten about that. No differently than what's happening, the rest of the world.
Thank you very much, and please join me in thanking the President.
We're not going to. We can just go there. We don't have to. We just shoot stuff for B-roll. If they let us in, yeah.
Hey, Paige, how are you? Good. Good to see you. I think I'm going to see you tomorrow. Yeah. Good to see you. It's going well?
Of course.
Thanks. Yeah.
Okay. See you.
Susan, you know Tim Dodd, don't you? If you don't, you should.
I'm so sorry. Hi, nice to meet you, Susan Bailey.
Oh, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks.
We gotta get you to come to speak to one of our food gatherings. You know, our Republicans are working on enough of these positions that are pretty regular. Johnny came on,
Oh, that's good.
which is great. But if you ever have time, you wanna speak to them.
Oh,
And a
absolutely.
helpful crowd.
Yeah, I'd be delighted.
Ira usually hosts.
The guy is very good for someone else. You get the duplicates. So sorry. Did you move?
We merged.
did.
We merged. And the good news is that now I
Wait a minute.
was, well, my new firm, 23 offices now.
Really?
It's great, yeah, we're the biggest.
Well, you
law
put
firm.
it both like
Oh,
this.
my God.
Fantastic. So we merged with London-based firm that had, so we
They
married.
expected that. They
That's
expected
super.
It's
that.
nice I'm
Because
co-chairing
even
the
they are
practice.
doing the Yagi dog.
We've been
So-
really helpful.
So, I have a future afterwards.
Oh, absolutely. Guaranteed.
I do have that
Your
laundry
country, right?
thing.
No, I dusted it off and hadn't been using it for years, but it's been nice.
People always say, well, you know, how come you don't do this? I'm practicing all the time.
Exactly. Well, I'll give you a holler. I'll come over to
No,
your
that's
fancy
great.
cafeteria, grab a barbecue or a coffee down in Foggy
I should
Bottom.
even go out sometime.
Yeah, no, it'd be fun. I think you can get your
Yeah, I look
education
up
just
to
under the limit.
Super.
I'll shoot you an email.
Thanks a lot.
I'll see you
All
tomorrow.
right, nice
Good
to
to
meet
meet
you.
you.
Is anybody going to lunch? Okay.
All right, there you go.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Tim Dodd.
Nice to meet you. We're in information. We're done.